Hi, friends. My name's Megan, and you're watching The Kettle. This is a channel where we talk all about connecting with ourselves, with each other, and with the world around us. And this week, I am offering a holiday baking pep talk. I have definitely needed this pep talk at times in my life, and you know what? Sometimes I still do. So this will be a little bit of a shorter video than usual. I am nursing a little bit of a cold right now and sipping my tea. And also, I am really head down in planning our holiday baking bee that's coming up this weekend for members of the Kettle, which is my Substack. And I will link to that below in the description and in the comments as well, in case you'd like to check that out. But just so you know, it will be a weekend-long, self-directed community baking event where you can kind of dip in and watch videos or take part in chats as it works for you. Most of the content will be recorded so you can watch it later in case you're not quite in the headspace yet to be doing your holiday baking in earnest yet, which I know a lot of people aren't. I'm trying to get ahead of it so that this content is there when you are ready. So maybe that'll be next week. But if you are part of the community, I do encourage you to at least put your eyes on it this weekend and maybe just take part in one chat or read over some of the materials, maybe make an ingredients list or a to-do list or just flip through some recipes, whatever feels really nurturing to you. I know we're right at the beginning of what can be a very busy holiday season, and we definitely don't want to be any more overwhelmed than we have to be during this time of year. But I also think sometimes getting a little bit ahead of things, even if it's just thinking about it and you're not actually doing anything yet, can help you feel a little more prepared and actually help you enjoy the parts of the holiday that are enjoyable. And for me, baking has really started to become one of those pretty recently. So I'm going to give you a little snapshot in time of where I am now. In case you're new here, I'm a mom of 5 kids, but my oldest 4 are adults. 3 of them are off living their lives. One lives here, but he's 22, so he's just renting space from us. And I just have one teenage daughter still at home. So my life looks very, very different than it did 5 Christmases ago, definitely 10 Christmases ago. And for years, I really felt this tension. I wanted to be that mom who was baking all season long and always in the kitchen and always had the apron on and always had delicious smelling things, sitting out on the counter. And then there was the reality that I had these 5 kids who were all in school at the same time in 3 different schools for several years and needed to be taken places and needed to be dropped off at parties or have gifts for events. Or I went to their school programs, their concerts, all of those things. I felt like the entire month of December, the calendar was full. And all I could find at the time or the energy for were like slice and bakes or those bags of powdered sugar cookie mix. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The funny thing is, I don't even really like sugar cookies. So I spent all of these years making things during the holiday that I thought I should make while ignoring the treats that I really enjoy and love. But that's just where I was. And it's okay. Like, that was the stage of life I was in. I think it took me a few years of being in a very different stage of life to adjust and shift and realize, oh, that is not my reality anymore. Nobody needs me to drive them to an after school party. The gifting looks very different this time of year. The expectations of me as a mom of one high school kid rather than a bunch of elementary and middle school kids, it's just so different that my holiday experience was changing. And so I decided I really wanted to create space to just sort of explore what baking could look like for me during the holiday. The other narrative that I had been sort of dealing with, struggling with, living under, however you want to put it, is that I'm a pretty chaotic baker. I'm not very organized. I'm messy. I'm not very good at following recipes. I'm not very precise. There's lots of reasons why I didn't really consider myself a good baker. Oh, and my decoration skills are awful. And I had labored under this idea that to be a baker, you have to be very organized. You have to be very precise. I really think that getting into sourdough baking has shifted that mentality for me quite a lot. With sourdough baking, one of the main ingredients, sourdough starter, is not really predictable. You don't exactly know what you're getting when you use that starter, how strong it is, how quickly your bread's going to rise. And so you have to rely on your eyes and ears and nose, and you have to become very intuitive about it. And I think there's space for that in other kinds of baking too. Now, granted, it's always a good idea to follow a recipe closely if you want to get the result that the creator of that recipe intends, right? But there's also room to put your own spin on it, your own stamp on it. And that creativity is, for me, a big part of what draws me to being in the kitchen. So if I took that out and all I was doing was just sort of executing someone else's idea over and over, personally, I'd find that very boring. So for me, there's like kind of a balance. There's a place I have to get to where I'm respecting the rules of baking, which are certain ingredients do certain things under certain circumstances and in certain amounts and proportions. And then there's the other part of me that just kind of wants to see, I want to put things together and see what happens. And giving myself space to do that in a lower pressure environment had been really helpful. And I've also developed some skills that I didn't always have. So I've gotten better at following recipes. I've gotten more organized. So I can kind of glance at a recipe now and know with a fair amount of certainty whether I have those ingredients in my pantry or not. Or if I'm not sure, I know where to look. And that's something that has developed over time with experience and just with repetition and doing it, right? Some of these things aren't necessarily talents that are inborn, but they're skills we develop and knowledge we develop and just sort of an instinct about what this process looks like that we develop. I also knew last year that I really wanted to set myself up for success, so I didn't go crazy with a bunch of really difficult recipes. I stuck to a couple of themes. I decided to double down on shortbreads and quick breads. I'm pretty comfortable with both. I love both, and it is the baker's prerogative to get to bake what the baker likes. So that was the place where I sort of decided to start last year, and it was great. Very successful. I baked a ton. And for me, the magic of baking during the holiday season is that you have permission. You have a perfect excuse to just hang out in the kitchen and bake any old time. If it's a random Wednesday, cool, I'll be baking. There doesn't have to be a reason or a goal or a paycheck or some productivity attached to it. I felt like baking, and now I have some yummy treats and maybe a few extra to give away. So, as part of this pep talk, I would suggest that you don't overcomplicate your menu. If you're not a super experienced baker, or if you're someone who maybe has baked in the past, but it's been a while, keep it simple. Pick one or two recipes that you really want to try, or maybe start with a category and narrow down from there. I think it's also really smart to know why you're doing this. If the whole point is that you just want to spend time in the kitchen, maybe pick something you already know you love to bake and just bake that. If the idea is that you want to develop a new technique or learn a new skill, then maybe you find recipes that allow you to do that specifically, but you really emphasize the process and the learning and not necessarily the finished product. Maybe for you, giving is a big part of the appeal of holiday baking. And I think that's something that can happen really organically. It doesn't have to mean that you have a long list of people you're going to gift and then you make the same dozen cookies for everybody on that list. I think you could just kind of look around you and see where the opportunities are. So last year, when I was baking all of those quick breads, I had this one that I really zeroed in on. It's delicious, but I was baking it so much that it became sort of this running joke that I was stealthily putting a loaf of it into my neighbor's mailbox every few days. He's this older man, he lives alone. He's pretty friendly with my husband, but he and I don't have a lot to talk about. But I started sneaking loaves of bread into his mailbox, and sometimes it would just be half a loaf. Sometimes I'd make a loaf, I'd cut off half for me and the kids, and then I would give more on the other half. And it became kind of this fun little joke, this sneaky little thing that I was doing just for him. I don't think it would be quite as fun if every week I had set out to bake like 10 of those loaves and give them to everybody in the neighborhood. It wouldn't have felt as organic. It wouldn't have felt as light and joyful. And so I'm looking forward to expanding on that idea just a little bit this year. Not too much because I want to keep it easy and organic and fun and something that I look forward to every year. So the last thing I think I would say is if you are also a mom who is moving past the stage of parenting where your life is really dictated by the kid's needs and calendar this time of year, just allow that narrative to shift a bit. Maybe you have more time than you think, or maybe your calendar is really too full, but the things that are on it aren't necessarily things you need to be doing anymore. I think that's a really important thing to look at and be honest with ourselves about in this stage of life, because sometimes things just stay as part of our routines or part of our calendars and they don't need to. It's time for them to shift, and it's time for us to maybe write a new story and explore a new narrative of what this season can look like for us. And I know for myself, I got a lot of joy out of baking being a much bigger part of my holiday season last year than it had been in previous holidays. And I'm looking forward to diving in even deeper this year with all of you. If you want to join us this weekend for the Holiday Baking Bee, you can sign up to become a member of the Kettle at my Substack. That's Megan with two A's, meaganfrancis.substack.com. And I'll drop the link to that below in the comments and in the description for this video as well. You can pop over there and join us, and we'll be kicking off Friday afternoon and going all weekend long until Sunday evening. But remember, if you're not around this weekend or you just don't have time to do a lot of baking, a lot of the content will be there for you to watch or read later. So you don't have to feel pressure to hit the ground running this weekend. Okay, that's all for this video, friends. A reminder that next Wednesday is the second Wednesday of the month. So that is the Wednesday that I have a video that is just for members of the Kettle. And then I'll be back here on YouTube with another video the Wednesday after that. And I'll see you soon.